Great. Thank you, councillors. So this one here is about our risk management policy. So we thought it might just be good to just have a bit of a high-level snapshot about this policy before it came to council. You would have, I guess, through the recent workshop with the risk appetite statement, now had a bit of a basic handle on the thinking around this. But I guess this is kind of our policy position that kind of reaffirms our risk management approach. And so what we've sort of done here is we'll put this up to the council meeting coming up next week. And the intent is that this will be kind of reviewed in line with the risk appetite statement, and should there be any need for any, I guess, update or change to this policy based on the final outcomes of that process, we would look to retable this with council. But we have sort of started to socialise this with the governance by design group who have been running the sessions to ensure that it kind of does align with what we're doing currently, which is great. So keep moving along here. So this is a bit of a snapshot here of how it all fits within the Local Government Act and the regulation. But effectively, councils are required to have an adopted risk management policy and a broader framework under the regulation as part of, I guess, its approach to ensuring that its practices and processes are ensuring that it's managing risk in an appropriate way. So the guidelines, I guess, are a supplement act. They supplement the act and the regulations to demonstrate how the legislative obligations should function in the context of day-to-day operational activities. And then you'll see as we go through this process that the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee exists as a separate advisory body, but they're required under the Act also to advise on council's risk management practices. So I guess this policy pulls together that thinking and just reaffirms council's approach to risk management to ensure it's consistent with those obligations under the legislation. So I guess the policy is a bit of an overview. It presents I guess, some guiding principles on how we will manage risk proactively. It establishes a bit of an approach for the organisation around our risk management practices. Behind the policy, there is a procedure. I will talk briefly to the procedure. You will receive the policy for adoption. The procedure is something behind the scenes operationally that staff will use to, I guess, manage and approach risk. It has been aligned with the Australian standards. The codes are there. I don't expect councillors to memorise those off by heart. But the risk management guidelines are a key document that has been used to ensure that when we're considering how we undertake the planning and processes around our framework, that it meets the requirements under those guidelines.
There's a typo in one of those Australian standards. It's 31001. Only kidding.
Okay, good. So also it's about how we promote, I guess, organisational culture around valuing positive risk management as well. And it assigns a responsibility and a bit of a top-down approach. So, looking at our leadership team and how they lead the organisation around decision-making. So I guess under the standards, risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives, I guess in basic terms there. But the purpose of risk management is to create and protect value within the council, to promote consistent decision making and make sure that anything that we undertake around our service offering is able to be achieved, I guess, in the face of uncertainty as well. We recognise that we can't always avoid risk, but it's about how we plan for it. We identify risks and we manage those risks, and to ensure that council can be resilient when faced with some of these risks. And I guess we're looking at some pretty significant projects like our Sewer and Coastal Villages program. It's probably the biggest project the council's ever undertaken, and we recognise that there's a huge amount of risk in taking something of that size on. And so it's ensuring that when we undertake these programs and projects that there is a good level of rigour in the front end of the planning that considers our risk in undertaking these works. And then should things not go to plan, what are our mitigation strategies and how do we respond in that environment. And so it also sort of sets, I guess, a bit of a commitment for council that I guess frames how we will approach risk and how it aligns with those standards. And so as I mentioned, we do have a procedure that sits behind this policy to ensure that our day-to-day, I guess, runnings of the organisation follow that policy and how then it's embedded in the work that we do. And so that's around ensuring that there's good record keeping in place. That's through risk registers, maintaining those registers. We spoke in establishing the risk appetite statement that underneath the statement and the policy, there are these risk registers at a strategic and operational level that look at what are all the key risks, not just to the organisation, but also to specific projects and service delivery as well. It's about defining those roles and responsibilities in the organisation, making sure that that key leadership roles and our governance roles are equipped with I guess the parameters and guidelines to effectively deliver this program. And again, setting out those step-by-step processes to ensure that risk management is really built into the thinking and the day-to-day duties. And again, creating a standard matrix tool to inform risk assessments. And something that we've seen is we've got these kind of matrix ways of identifying safety and risk and all these things across the business. And we have different, I guess, levels of complexity within the business. So with our broader road and bridge programs, we've got some pretty detailed project planning, but it's also how do we build that thinking into our, I guess, lower risk and low level service delivery programs, but keep it uniform in the approach so that way it's not confusing when we start to present things across the business. So here are just some of the projects that we're working on in the back end here. So as I spoke to, the risk appetite statement, which is a workshop that we're undertaking with the councillors again, a relatively new approach and one of those, I guess, engagement activities that we're looking to really strengthen to bring the council on board with how we, I guess, set what the appetite is for our risk across the business and having the councillors establish their risk appetite statement informs then better decision making and planning on the ground for our operational service delivery. Looking at our business continuity plan and a gap analysis. So, if we had a major disaster and business was disrupted, how long could our business be down? If we look at our waste services, for instance, and flood and the impacts that a major disaster has on trying to get bins emptied. So we look at all those sorts of things. How long could our main office be down and our IT systems be down before we really need to be operational? So it's about reviewing those continuity plans and being prepared for different disasters and different environments. We're also undertaking an audit at the moment of our fraud controls. So looking at our framework, making sure that our practices are in line with modern standards and modern approaches. So it's a bit of an internal audit function there where we've engaged an external agency to come in and look at that kind of function across our business and how we can kind of consider doing things better. So similar to a service review, we also have our audit program. It kind of works in a similar fashion that, we want to find better ways to do things. We want to identify the gaps. We want to look at, how we can implement better practice in some of these functions. There's currently a review of our risk registers underway, so that's a pretty lengthy exercise and looking across the whole business at all the different functions and identifying, I guess, what are the strategic risks and what are the operational risks and ensuring we've got, I guess, clear controls in place on how we manage those risks as well. And then looking at that continuous improvement pathway. So through our insurance provider, Statewide Mutual, we work very closely with them. And so we've got some reporting requirements that we have to undertake through our insurer. But then through that process, we also have, I guess, a range of benefits that we can tap into. And so they have worked very closely in looking at our policy and our framework that we're undertaking development of, providing insights as well. So, yeah, so just sort of identifying there that our incident investigation has been selected for the topic of this year's report that they also put out. So they've identified that some of the work that we're doing is really worth celebrating. So that's a good news story there. So here at the back end, this is pretty much wrapping up this presentation, but this is just some of the related legislation and strategies that we've identified that are important in considering when we develop this policy. And so, as you can see there, we ensure that it aligns with both the Local Government Act and the regulations, the guidelines for risk management and the internal audit, and then the different risk management guidelines and frameworks as well. And then ensuring that it kind of aligns with our plan for the future is really important to make sure that, again, our policy position is achieving what our community strategic plan has set out to do, and then how it informs the work that our audit and risk committee do around looking at their audit plans and their improvement charter as well. So that's just some of the key documentation there, but you will have seen at one of the previous council meetings recently that the annual report came up from our audit risk and improvement committee, and so you will see detail in there around our risk management practices as well. So it's just having those I guess frameworks in place to ensure that we are, one, meeting the requirements under the Act and the regulation, but also ensuring we have good, robust processes in place and practices across the organisation for consistency. So,
and that's something I was going to say, like risk management is not just about compliance. Like putting this in place actually makes us operate better. It makes us consider things in a more managed fashion so that we can make sure that we're providing the service to the community that's required, and we're doing it in a way that does minimise that risk, not only for us as an organisation, but for the community as well. So I think having a good risk management framework is a really good step in running a good organisation that provides service to the community. So,
thank you,
all right,
Mark.
councillors,
So,
any questions?
Just seeking any questions, but you will see this report in the agenda when it's published shortly, and give you a bit more context, and you'll be able to see the document as well. Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Yeah, it's is there so the context of the question is it's obviously a really good approach that it's delegated through the different departments to follow the procedure and the spreadsheets and the requirements and the steps. Is there a single person who hasn't probably reporting to you who has an overseeing role, who's almost like a risk officer to check that departments are actually doing what they're required to do under the processes?
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor O'Keefe. So we've so through the service review process of looking at the governance team, we've established a risk and claims officer. So that person is employed with the organisation, so they look to sort of deal with any claims against council that happen, so insurance-related matters, and then are also tasked with, I guess, developing and implementing this framework and embedding it across the organisation. So we have a lot of these functions that sort of are one-person roles that work across the business to ensure that they're not necessarily responsible for all of the things that happen, but they work as a bit of an umbrella approach to ensure there's consistency, to ensure that there's a reporting mechanism in place as well to feed that information back through and keep an eye on risk registers, corrective actions, processes, and so forth. And that person has also been appointed as our internal audit officer. And so that person also undertakes, I guess, a body of work around doing internal audits. So we have a budget allocation to support that role, to engage external agencies to come in and do different audits. That audit program has been identified by our Audit Risk Improvement Committee. And so there is a 4-year audit plan and a 1-year audit plan that is followed and implemented that comes out of that Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. And so this role also has, I guess, a direct relationship with the chair to the committee to ensure that that committee remains engaged in the organisation, but is still able to operate at arm's length to the broader business, if that makes sense. So, yeah, look, it's really great. We've got somebody very skilled in the seat, and we've seen some really great traction in the short time that she's been engaged, which is wonderful. So yeah. Any more questions?
Any other questions, councillors?